Well, last week we learned how to do a string block, and this week we're going to learn what we can do with those string blocks. But before we begin, someone's back. Let's get started. So there's a little backstory to this week's block. Now, I was actually talking with a very good friend of mine. You know her as Tiffany's Quilting Life. Yep, I was talking to Tiffany Groff on Facebook. And we were just kind of chatting away. And the question came up was, well, what is the next block going to be? And I told her I was doing a string block, but I was looking to do something a little bit more with it. And before you know it, Tiffany started throwing out measurements and giving me instructions as to how to cut it and where to cut it and what to do with it. And before I knew it, this star was born. So we're making Tiffany's star this week. So to make this block, you will need 4 6.5-inch string squares. Then you will also need 3 1/4-inch squares of a contrasting fabric. Now, I cut a strip that is 3 1/4 inches, and I'm going to be subcutting this into 3 1/4-inch squares. Now, when you choose your fabric for that 3 1/4-inch square, you want to make sure that it does stand out to a certain degree. So in choosing this yellow, notice that I don't really have any yellows in my string blocks. Well, there's the yellow flower there, but this yellow is going to stand out among all of these strings because, again, there is no yellow. I do have white, I have a lot of black, and quite a bit of green. This yellow is going to pop against all of these other colors, which is why I chose this. So take a look at your string blocks and see what color will actually stand out among all the rest of the colors. So first of all, let's sew our string blocks together, and I'm going to do it in this arrangement where it sort of makes this square here. You could very well do, well, you can lay it out any which way you want to. Really, the choice is really yours. So you could also do this version where the strings actually make like an X here. That looks kind of cool. Or, you can do the version where all the strings are going in one direction. So the choice is yours. So let's sew this block together. So here, let's see how we did. Okay. Now it's string blocks, so you don't necessarily have to make sure that all of the strings kind of match up here. They're so off kilter that it doesn't matter. Now, what does matter is how you press your seams. Now, for the sake of this string block, I'm actually just going to press these seams open because of the fact that there's so much bulk into these seams, and because of the amount of strings that we got in there, I just find that pressing the seams open at this point really helps to keep the seams flat. And I am actually going to take this to the iron and press it down. Now you could very well press the seam to one side. I just find that pressing it open, again, just helps to kind of distribute the bulk a little better. And, well, when you go to quilt this quilt, or if you have a long armor, they're going to thank you for this. Okay, so let's lay this back out, and let's get that middle seam sewn. And we're going to press the seams open there. Okay. So we got our string blocks, or our 4 string blocks, all sewn, and the seams are all pressed open, and you use the iron to press it down, not just finger press it. let's go back to the cutting table and we'll start preparing our star legs. So we have our string block all sewn, and that 3 1/4 inch strip, I subcut that into 3 1/4 inch squares. Now, one strip that is width of fabric can probably, I think this is 12 squares. You're only going to need 8 of them. Now what we're doing here is we will be making the star legs using flying geese, but we're going to have to actually cut this square down to, guess what, 3 1/4 inches. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be cutting all 4 sides, cutting off a strip that is 3 1/4 inches. So let's start with this side here, 3 1/4. I'll use this side of the ruler, 3 1/4, and here we cut it. And just like that, we got one side here. Oh, didn't quite go all the way through. Any other loose strings, make sure you have a sharp blade. I've been saying that for the past couple weeks, and I just put a fresh blade, but I think I nicked it somewhere. So that's one. And this is where a rotating mat can help you, because we will be, when I turn it this way, just line it up again, I'm going to cut 3 1/4 inches off of each side there with this part already cut. So I'm just going to reline it up, 3 1/4 right there. Then I'm going to turn this. Now, again, if you have a rotating mat, this is the time to actually use that. Okay, 3 1/4 here. I just don't have a rotating mat that is big enough for this, but even if it's a little bit off, like I'm talking millimeters off, it's not going to affect this very much. I don't think I went all the way through there. Okay, then one last turn. Okay, oops. Match it up, line it back up a little better. And 3 1/4, which is there. And we will cut it. So what you will get is this will remain as your center. These units here, we're going to use these units to make our flying geese, and these will stay just as they are. And once we get our flying geese units are made, we're going to sew everything back together. Okay, so let's go back to the sewing machine and let's make our flying geese units there. So this is what our block should look like after we get all these flying geese units sewn. For now, I'm just actually finger pressing down these 3 1/4 inch square units. So we're going to be sewing right on that creased line. I need to double check and make sure that I got the orientation, or how I'm going to sew it is actually going to be in the correct direction. So I'm going from this corner to the center, then from the center to that corner. So let's get this block sewn. Because of the fact that we use paper as our foundation, when you sew on these flying geese units, you do want to make sure that you have them in the correct orientation. Otherwise, if you sew it on incorrectly and you need to rip the stitches out, well, guess what? You're perforating that paper in the back, so it might come loose. Wait, did I sew that right? No, I sewed it on wrong. And of course, as soon as I say that, I realize I sewed it on wrong. You know why? I didn't take a sip. Okay, let's get to fixing this. Yeah, and I sewed it onto the wrong side. Darn it. Okay, let's rip these out. Now, one thing you want to be careful of when you rip, if you need to rip a stitch because you sewed it on wrong, remember that you do have the paper here, and that the more times you need to rip a stitch, the more likely that you're going to loosen up that paper. So try not to make mistakes on this, and just be careful when you're taking off those stitches that you're not ripping other things, or that you're not ripping your foundation off. Rip it, rip it, rip it. Okay, so I ripped it out, and well, part of the newspaper in the back is coming off, but well, at this point I can't help that. Well, let's re-sew it back together, and let's do it correctly this time. But before I do that, yeah, I better have a sip. Oh, it's like being reunited with an old friend. Ew, I got some dust in there. Oh, that is gross. Yeah, oh well, extra flavor. Okay, let's get this sewn. Okay, so I need to go in that direction as well as in this direction. So that's what we're looking for. So I do need to go from the corner down. Okay, so let's see how we did this time. Which, yeah, that's a lot better. So we got our star legs also, or our flying geese units all sewn. So let's trim these up. And we'll just square up this. And then I could sew these together, or I could just throw them in the crumb bin. I think I'm gonna just put them in the crumb bin for now. Okay. This I will put crumb bin, or I'll sew that off when I'm ready to. So there is one flying geese unit. Now I see here that, well, I'm gonna lose my points. That's not a 1/4 inch there. Okay, so I'm not gonna worry about that. You know, if it's gonna bother you, something like that is gonna bother you, go ahead and make the adjustments that you need to. But stuff like that on this particular quilt, I mean, it's a scrap quilt and it's not gonna be like in a museum or anything, so I don't care if my points line up. The two triangles are actually supposed to overlap about a 1/4 inch down if you sewed it right. So here, I'm just trimming off the excess here. Trim that down. You know, we're almost halfway through this quilt, and I was kind of thinking, you know, what am I going to use this quilt for? Or, yeah, when it's all done, I mean, am I going to give it away as a donation? Am I going to keep the quilt? Probably I'm going to keep the quilt, but I was kind of thinking, you know, do I keep the quilt or do I make it as a charity quilt? You know, when I make quilts, well, especially on scrap quilts or string quilts like what we're doing right now, if I were to make a whole quilt out of just this star pattern or a string, these string blocks, I would actually use it as a donation quilt. I know that for those of you that are following along, some of you are actually making multiple blocks of each week. And so I'm kind of curious, what do you plan to do with the quilt after all 52 blocks are made? Are you going to keep it for yourself? Are you going to give it to someone like me? Or do you plan on using it as a charity quilt? Put a comment down below. Let everyone know what you plan to do with the quilt after it's all done. It's always interesting reasons why people make the quilt, just for the sake of making it, or if they're planning on using it as a charity quilt. And here is the last flying geese unit that we need to make. Okay. So flying geese units are all done, trimmed off. Let's see what this block looks like when we have it all laid out. So I'm gonna bring this in, and hopefully you can see the whole thing. Okay. So we got one unit there, one unit there, there, and there. Remove our strings. Let's get this string block all sewn together. And here is my Tiffany star. Well, my block ended up being 11 3/4 inches, and I think that is where it should land. Now, of course, that'll be dependent upon your own 1/4 inch seam allowance. But I do like this particular block and how it came out. And well, I have a whole container of these strings here, so you might be seeing me make a whole quilt out of it. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed working with string blocks, and I hope this inspired you to create your own string block. I'm gonna have another giveaway, but in order to participate in that giveaway, you must be a member of the Treasure Hearts Creations Facebook discussion group. So head on over to Facebook and join the Facebook discussion group, because the prize that I'm giving away, as well as how to enter the giveaway, it'll all be in a video uploaded to Facebook. Well, that's it for this video, so go out and create something. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications on when I upload the next video. Put a comment down below saying what you liked, or maybe even what you didn't like. And join the Facebook discussion group at Treasure Heart Creations. You can post pictures of the blocks that you created, or just scroll through and gather inspiration from other Treasure Heart Creation Group members. And from time to time, there are giveaways exclusively for Treasure Heart Creation Group members. So use the link in the description box below to sign up. If you're on Instagram, post pictures of the blocks that you're working on using the hashtag THC5252. Well, that's it for now. Now go out and create something.